So, you've seen them everywhere, right? These super slick, colorful infographics that promise to explain everything in a single glance. But here's the big question. Can they actually make us smarter? Can they make us better learners? Well, today we are going to break down the science and find out.
All right, so before we even get to the infographics themselves, we need to talk about the challenge they're supposed to solve. And that challenge is the insane amount of information we are all swimming in every single day.
I mean, just think about your phone for a second. Every time you unlock it, you're hit with this tidal wave of visuals, charts, videos, memes, ads. It's a constant battle for our attention. And this isn't just a fad, you know? It's a total shift in how we get our information.
Which brings us to this huge question, right? Just because we're seeing more stuff, does that mean we're actually learning more? Or is most of it just noise? This is a really big deal for educators and anyone trying to teach effectively in the modern world.
So, how do we possibly cut through all that noise? Well, this is where the infographic steps into the spotlight. The idea is that maybe, just maybe, this is the tool that can help us turn all that visual clutter into something that actually helps us learn.
So what exactly is an infographic? Well, at its core, it's this awesome mix of words, pictures, and charts, all designed to do one thing: take a really complicated idea and make it super simple and easy to understand fast. It's like a bridge that connects the part of your brain that reads with the part that sees pictures.
And the theory behind why this should work is actually pretty cool. It's called dual coding theory. The idea is that our brains have two separate channels for information, one for words and one for images. So when you combine them, you're hitting both channels at once, which should, in theory, make the information much easier to remember. But does it work in the real world?
Exactly. It's one thing for a theory to sound good on paper, but it's a whole different ballgame to see if it holds up in a real classroom with real students. So that's what a team of researchers set out to do, to finally get a solid answer.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. How do you even go about testing something like this? Well, let's dive into the pretty clever experiment that researchers Benjamin Carcamo and Bernardo Pino put together.
The magic number for this study? 46. That's how many university students ended up in the final study. And these weren't just any students. They were all native Spanish speakers who were taking a class to learn English, which is, the perfect situation to test how people learn new, complex information.
Now, to make sure this was a really fair test, the researchers did something classic. They split the students into two groups. You had the control group, who got the standard English lessons, the usual stuff, and then you had the intervention group, and their lessons were built completely around these specially designed infographics. And the process was super methodical. First up, everybody took a pre-test to see where they were starting from. Then, for 7 sessions, the groups got their different kinds of lessons. And finally, everyone took the test again. Simple, right? By comparing the scores from before and after, they could see exactly what impact the infographics had.
All right, this is it, the big reveal. After all that setup, after all that careful testing, what did the numbers actually say? Well, the results for reading comprehension were, wow, just crystal clear. The group that learned with infographics saw a huge, and I mean statistically significant leap in their scores. The control group got a little better, sure, but nothing like the infographic group. It was a home run.
But hold on, because understanding the words is only part of the story. The researchers were also looking for something deeper, something called critical thinking. And this is where the story takes a really interesting turn.
So get this. Even though the infographics were amazing for helping students understand the material, they didn't really move the needle on critical thinking. The students could tell you what the text said, but they weren't any better at analyzing it or questioning it. And that might be because infographics are so good at presenting information as simple fact that they don't really invite you to argue with them. But, data is one thing. What was it actually like in the classroom? Well, the researchers looked at the teacher's logs and they found some really interesting human details. Like this quote here, where a teacher noted that the materials were super engaging, but sometimes, for the really tough ideas, they had to switch back to Spanish to make sure everyone was on the same page. And when you look at all the feedback from the teachers, a really clear picture starts to form. That huge slice there, that's student engagement. Teachers said it was through the roof. They also said the infographics were generally really effective. But that little slice, that reminds us that even with great visuals, sometimes you just need a straightforward explanation.
Okay, so let's zoom out. We've got the test results, we've got the teacher feedback. What does this all mean? What's the big takeaway here for the future of how we learn?
Here's what it all boils down to. 1. Infographics absolutely work. They are a fantastic tool for getting people to understand complex stuff, and they're super engaging. 2. They get students excited and involved. But, and this is the big but, they are not a magic wand for critical thinking. That's a totally separate skill, and it needs to be taught on purpose, right alongside these cool visual tools.
And that really leaves us with a huge question to chew on, doesn't it? In this world where we are just drowning in visual media, how do we do more than just consume it? How do we teach ourselves and our kids to look at an image or chart and ask, is this true? What's the agenda here? What are they not showing me? It's about learning not just to look, but to truly see.